Wright's Help to Latin Grammar on the Use of Words, Chapter 7, Part 1, brought to you by Latinum, latinum.org.uk. We are now going to see how the forms of words are used. But first, what is the use of words? This means to express what passes in the mind. How can you make words do this? I must put them in sentences, that is, arrange them so as to have a meaning. What then is a sentence? Words arranged so as to have a meaning. Let us see whether you can make a sentence yet. What class of words or parts of speech have you learnt? Nouns, adjectives, pronouns, verbs. What is a noun? A pronoun, a verb. A noun is the name of an object. An object is anything whatever impressed on the mind, whether through the senses or not. That is, anything I can see, hear, smell, taste, touch, or in any way think of. A pronoun is a word used instead of a noun. A verb is a word used, joined to a noun, which denotes that the object named by it performs a certain action. Now then, form a sentence, as short a one as possible. It must consist of two words at the least. One, a noun or pronoun, to name an object. For, if you speak, you must speak about some object. The other, a verb, to say something about the object. John runs. Very well. Now, I want you to give an account of every word you come to. You must say what part of speech it is, what word it comes from, what part or form of that word it is, and why it is in such part or form. This is called parsing a word. I will now show you how to parse the two words in your sentence, giving the reason for each step. John, a proper noun. A noun because it is the name of an object which we can see and touch. Proper because it is a name proper to one object, not common to a class. It is in the singular number because you name only one object, and in the nominative case because the object John is spoken of as acting. Runs. As far as form goes, this might be a noun in the plural number, but clearly it cannot be, for we have got one noun already in the sentence, And the other word we said was to be a verb. Runs, then, is a verb, denoting an action performed by the object John. It is in the third person, because you are speaking neither of yourself nor of me, but of some third person. It is in the singular number, because you speak of only one object as running. In the present tense, because you mean to say that he is running now. In the indicative mood, because you wish simply to state the fact of his running. Now, form another sentence and parse the words. Dogs run. Dogs. Noun. In the plural number. And nominative case, because the objects are spoken of as acting. Run, verb, in the third person, plural number, present tense, indicative mood. How should you express that you run yourself? I should say, I run. Yes. Instead of naming yourself, you use the personal pronoun for the first person, I. And if, when speaking to me, you wished to speak of me, you would use the pronoun for the second person, you, or in the Old English, thou. In Latin, you might omit these pronouns, but in English you must insert them, because the verb changes so little that otherwise we cannot tell who it is that runs. Before going any further, I wish to give you a more convenient rule for the nominative case. If an object, we said, is spoken of as acting, its noun is in the nominative case. In the sentence, John runs, John names an object which is spoken of as acting and is therefore in the nominative case. In the sentence, John lifted George, John names an object which is spoken of as acting on another object and is therefore in the nominative case. Now, in each of these sentences, John names the object, which is called the subject of the sentence. That is, the object about which what is spoken in the sentence is spoken. And in every sentence that can be formed, whether one or more object is named, there is one object about which whatever is spoken in the sentence is spoken. This object is called the subject of the sentence, and the word which names it, whether noun or pronoun, we call the subject word. Our new rule then for the nominative case will be: if an object is spoken of as the subject of the sentence, its noun is in the nominative case. Or more simply, the subject word is in the nominative case. I think you can understand this rule now, as you know what a sentence is, but you must carefully distinguish between object and subject. Whatever is impressed on the mind, whether person or thing, we call an object, because it is thus laid before the mind. In a sentence, we speak of one or more objects, but in every sentence there is one object called the subject, because it is laid under the sentence, being, as it were, the foundation on which the sentence is built. Every subject you see, therefore, must be an object, but every object is not the subject. Now, let us go back to the simple sentences we were considering: John runs, etc. You will now understand that if there are only two words in a sentence, one must be the subject word, and that this is in the nominative case. The other, in the present sentences at least, will be a verb. These two words are connected by the following rule, called the first concorde. The verb agrees with the subject word in number and person. That is to say, with regard to number, if the subject word names one object, which comes from the Latin word objectum, a thing laid before. Laid before what? Laid before the mind. Menti, being understood in Latin. Subject comes from subjectum, a thing laid under. Laid under what? Not under the mind, but laid under the sentence. Sententiae, not menti, being understood in the Latin. So with regard to number, if the subject word names one object, the verb, as well as the subject word, is in the singular. If the subject word names more objects than one, the verb, as well as the subject word, is in the plural number. With regard to person, if the subject word is the pronoun for the first person, the verb is in the first person. If the subject word is the pronoun for the second person, the verb is in the second person. If the subject word is any other pronoun or any noun, the verb is in the third person. I am now going to give you some Latin sentences as examples of this rule, and you must try to make them out by yourself. Pronouns you will at once recognize. The other words you must deal with in this manner. You know that there are 5 classes or declensions of nouns, and you have learned an example of each declension. Each word you come to will have a separate root of its own, but the termination will be like the termination of one or other of the examples you have learnt. Well then, when you come to a word, think over your 5 examples of nouns till you come to a form with the same termination as the word. Whatever then is the number and case of the form, that may be the number and case of the word, but it will not necessarily be so. For different cases of a noun end in the same way, and other words end in the same way as nouns. You must therefore test your word in this way. Look out in the vocabulary or your dictionary to see whether there is such a noun as you suppose it to come from. Consider whether it makes sense in the sentence as a noun, and whether it obeys the first concorde. If it stands these tests, consider it to be a noun and find its meaning. If not, proceed in the same way with the 4 conjugations of verbs. Think over the 4 examples till you come to a form with the same termination as your word. You are sure to find one, for the word, if not a noun, will be a verb. And that brings us to our end of Introduction to Parsing. We will continue